My grandmother was a complete master at using Christian speak to keep from doing things that she didn't want to do. So, towards the end of her life, my grandmother became more of a Christian, got baptized, all of that stuff. But when I was younger, she was more of a CME. So, she would go to church on Christmas, Mother's Day, Easter. And whenever someone at the church would try to convince her to, you know, join one of the auxiliaries or participate in some event or something like that, she would always respond with, "That sounds like a good idea. I really want to pray about it and ask, what direction I should go with in this." And the person would say, "Yeah, yeah, you do that." And of course, she'd always come back with, "I really prayed about it, and I don't feel like that this is the direction that God is leading me into in this season." So I was thinking about that because, oftentimes I get a question from clients about how do I tell my family and friends that I'm not in a place to settle down right now? Or how do I respond to the question of, why don't you have a man yet? So we are going to answer that question today using some of those responses that are hard to refute. So, welcome. My name is Keisha Rice. I am a dating coach. I am also a hypnotherapist. I help women learn how to heal from old relationship wounds and to attract healthy, loving relationships. So, this whole idea of answering that question, why don't you have a man yet? Or when are you going to settle down? That is one of the most annoying questions that you can ever receive when you are in your single season. I've been there. In fact, as of the recording of this video, I am still there because I'm married. But of course, once you get married, then it becomes, when are you going to have kids, right? So, those intrusive questions never stop. And right now it is fall, which means that the holidays are going to be here very soon. And you are going to have to deal with those holiday dinner interrogations. So let's talk about a few responses that you can go with to answer the question. So before actually I get into those responses, I do want to make one point clear. You don't owe anyone anything. You very much can choose to just not answer questions. You can choose to set that boundary. You can tell your family members and your friends that your love life is not up for discussion. It is not up for debate. And if they bring that up, you will change the subject. If they try to bring it back, you will leave. Again, you don't owe anyone anything, and you don't have to defend your worth because you are valuable and you are worthy regardless of whether or not you are in a relationship. However, I do also understand that sometimes you just don't want to deal with all of that, especially if it's a family member that you don't see very often. Taking the time to have that whole discussion and set the whole boundary is something that you just don't want to put energy in. So that is the purpose of this video, for answering questions like that. I would encourage you, though, that if this is truly something you don't want to discuss at all, for the people who are close to you, that you deal with a lot, that you see fairly often, you should have this discussion and set the boundary. But just remember, you're not behind, that, you know, marriage is not something that has a deadline, and being single is not you being in a holding pattern. It is being in a specific season where God is working with you and through you and for you on specific things. But again, here are some practical responses. So the first one is to redirect people in a lighthearted, kind of fun way so that you're not letting the conversation get too serious, but you're also making your point and you're getting your point across. So if your aunt or mother or grandmother says something like, "Oh, when are you going to finally settle down?" Your response can be something like, "When God sends someone who's going to keep up with me," right? You show that you have some humor, you show that you're not pressured, you're not feeling depressed over the fact that you're in your single season, and you remind people that you are not desperate and you're willing to wait. You're willing to wait on somebody who is worth the wait. The second response is the faith-centered answer, and that is similar to what my grandmother would do with, I'm going to ask God about it and then responding later with, God hasn't hasn't told me that this is what I need to do, basically. So if someone says, you're not getting any younger, are you worried about your clock ticking, all of that, then you can respond with, I trust God's timing and he's never failed me yet. So this shows that you are full of faith. It is a powerful response and it shifts the conversation to talking about, God's timing and believing in that, as opposed to, again, your biological clock, which is is not other people's business to begin with. Just but yeah. Um, and then the third response that I want you to keep in mind. This one is a boundary setting response. I think a lot lighter than what I talked about at the beginning, where you have a whole conversation about it, but still, it is making a boundary clear. If you have a family member who won't let it go and who keeps saying, you're too picky, you need to lower your standards, you just need to give men more of a chance, all of that, then you pause, you look them directly in the eye, and you tell them that I know what God's placed on my heart, and I would much rather wait on that than to rush into something that's not in alignment. This sets a boundary with grace, without the guilt. And again, it reminds people that you are not desperate. You are trusting God's timing. And whenever that time is right, then you know that the right relationship is going to come. So if the conversation continues to drag on, because, some people don't know how to let things go, right? Um, just exit the conversation. Just tell people that, I love you. This was fun. This was interesting. I'm glad that you care about my life and all of that. But I'd rather talk about something else. And then bring up another topic. Ask them about their job, their grandkids. Ask them about any hobbies that they're interested in. People love to talk about themselves. They really do. So if you give people that chance, oftentimes they will take the bait. And then that allows the conversation to redirect. But in all of these cases, I want you to notice the pattern. And that pattern is that these responses never involve you apologizing, because once you apologize, you have to start defending and you will have to keep defending. So you don't want to start that loop. And they're also short. They're also said with love and they are said with confidence. When you have those things nailed down, it becomes a lot more difficult for people to give their own rebuttals. And I want you to again remember that you don't owe anyone anything. That when you are giving these responses, you're not being mean. You're not saying, well, I'm just trying to address their concerns. You don't owe responses to their concerns. You owe responses to your own concerns, to your own path that God has outlined for you. And you need to stay confident in that and not worry so much about how other people feel about it. So instead of walking into Thanksgiving, Christmas, any of these other holidays that are coming up with dread and with wanting to get out there as quickly as possible, enter with confidence because now you know what to say. Now you have these responses. Um, and now you don't have to worry about being dragged into discussions that you don't want to get into. And you can be the one who shifts the atmosphere, who shifts the tone. And not only are you shifting the tone for yourself, but in doing this, one of the things that I talk to my clients about all the time is breaking generational curses. And whether it's talk about being single or whether it's other things, the women who come to me with this, it is often something throughout their entire family where everyone is too nosy, too into other people's businesses, and oftentimes bullying people into getting the responses that they want. So, by you doing this, you're not only boosting your own confidence and setting the tone for how people should treat you and how people should address you, But you are breaking these generational curses and setting examples for the next generation, whether that is your younger cousins, your nieces, or if you have a daughter yourself, for your own child or your own children. So remind yourself that this is about a bigger mission than you when you are setting the tone in this way. And if you're ready to go deeper into learning how to set boundaries and, avoiding these awkward questions, but also attracting your purpose partner, then I would love to work with you in my coaching program, From Toxic to Thriving. It is all about learning how to heal from those toxic patterns and attracting both better relationships, but also better treatment of you in general. And it's designed specifically for Christian women to help you heal, to help you set your standards, and to help you experience what dating looks like when it is actually aligned with your faith. So you can go to the link in the description to find out more and to schedule a call with me. In the meantime, just remember that when you get these questions about settling down, all you have to do is smile, stand tall, and remember that you already live a life that is worth celebrating. And while, yes, having a great partner is going to add on to that, you are already whole as is. And the right man is only going to improve that, not define your life. Love you, and I'll talk to you soon.